In the quiet corners of Asia's neon cities, where grief echoes louder than traffic, and sorrow clings to the walls like mold, some apartments don't forget. Some stories still knock. Welcome to Ghosts of Asia, a place where loneliness whispers, the dead remember, and silence is never empty. Tonight, we follow a knock. It comes softly, once at 2:59 a.m. But the man inside lives alone. I moved in on a Wednesday. The city was still wet from rain, and the hallway carpets in the apartment complex clung to my shoes with a squish that felt like a warning. I had no family here, no friends either. Just a job I didn't care for, and a lease I signed too quickly. The unit was small, a studio, tucked into the corner of the 11th floor. The kind of place designed for someone who didn't expect visitors. Faint yellow walls, a single window that didn't quite seal, cabinets that smelled of someone else's cooking. But the rent was low, and I didn't ask questions. I didn't need much anymore. Not since her. The moving truck was gone by nightfall. I unpacked slowly, one box at a time, placing things with mechanical care. The room looked unfamiliar even as I filled it, like I was decorating someone else's sorrow. I heated a convenience store meal in the microwave, sat on the floor, and ate in silence. No TV, no music, just the hum of city traffic far below and the steady dripping of the tap in the bathroom I hadn't yet fixed. By midnight, I was in bed. I hadn't bothered setting up the frame, just a mattress on the floor, 2 pillows, and a heavy blanket she used to love. I drifted somewhere between sleep and thought, that thick gray place where memory feels more real than present time. Then it came. A knock. Soft. Deliberate. Once. It echoed through the room like it had traveled from the bottom of a well. It was 2:59 a.m. I know that because my phone lit up at the same time, an eerie glow on the floor beside me, displaying those 3 digits with quiet insistence. I sat up, confused, heart slow but uneasy. I waited for more, another knock, footsteps, a second attempt. But the silence that followed was almost aggressive in its stillness. I pulled on a shirt and padded barefoot to the door, pressed my eye to the peephole. Nothing. The hallway light flickered once, buzzed faintly. I opened the door anyway. Just air. Cold, still, and empty. The hallway stretched left and right in silence. No doors closing, no elevators dinging, no footsteps retreating. Just silence that pressed too hard against my ears. I stood there a moment, trying to rationalize. Maybe a neighbor confused the doors. Maybe it was an echo from another floor. But no one knocked again, and when I shut the door, it clicked too loudly, too final. I didn't sleep well after that. Not because I was afraid, but because it had been her knock. I hadn't heard it in a year, not since the night she didn't come home. The next morning I told myself it was nothing, just my mind playing tricks, stress, exhaustion, the smell of cardboard still lingering from the boxes. I drowned the thought in coffee and noise, let the news anchor's voice fill the air with things that didn't matter. But even in the noise, the memory of the knock lingered. It hadn't been loud. It hadn't been frantic. It had been soft, familiar, like a secret shared between lovers. Like how she used to knock when she forgot her keys. Once. Always once. I didn't tell anyone. There was no one to tell. Instead, I walked the apartment again that evening, checking every corner, every hinge, every shadow, as if ghosts obeyed the laws of doors and locks. At 10 p.m., I double-locked the entrance and leaned my weight against it. I whispered her name under my breath without meaning to. At 11 p.m., I lay in bed, but left the bathroom light on. At midnight, I clutched the blanket too tightly. At 2 a.m., I sat up, waiting. At 2:45, the city outside fell into a hush. Even the traffic faded. And at 2:59 a.m., like a clock that still remembered her, the knock came again. Soft, once, exactly the same. My breath froze. My heart didn't race. It held still, like it was listening to something that should no longer be there. She had been gone a year. A car accident on a rainy night. No last words, no goodbye. But her knock, that gentle single knock, had found its way back to me, as if the night still remembered, as if I was the one who forgot. Morning light slid through the blinds like dull knives, gray, thin, unwelcoming. I hadn't truly slept. My eyes ached, but my thoughts wouldn't settle. Every time I began to drift, I heard that single knock again in my mind, repeating softly against the door of memory. The apartment felt heavier today, as if someone else had been breathing the same air while I slept. I made coffee, though it tasted like metal. The kettle wheezed like a tired sigh, and the steam fogged the window above the sink. When I turned, I noticed it. Faint, familiar, impossible. Jasmine. A scent I hadn't smelled in over a year. Her perfume, the one she wore even when we fought, the one that clung to my shirts long after she stopped being there to wear it. It floated gently through the air, not overpowering, just certain, unmistakable. It came from the corner near the bed where her side used to be. The bottle of her perfume had been buried somewhere deep in a box I hadn't dared to open. I hadn't even unpacked that box yet. But the scent was here, real, present, breathing. I walked toward it, slow, careful, as if noise might scare it away. But no, the smell only deepened. The closer I came, the more vivid it became. Warm, floral, alive. The air felt different too, slightly colder, as if a window had been opened a moment before. Yet everything was shut tight. For a long time, I just stood there, in the middle of the apartment, and breathed it in. It should have hurt, but it didn't. It felt like memory had found a way to be kind for once. That day at work, I moved like a ghost through routines. My coworkers talked about deadlines, sales numbers, gossip, things that belonged to people who still looked forward. I didn't. My mind stayed in that apartment, with that scent, hovering between comfort and terror. When I returned home that night, the smell was gone, replaced by dust and detergent. But when I pulled off my jacket, it was faintly there again, in the fabric, as if she'd hugged me in my sleep. At midnight, I tried not to think about 2:59 a.m. I even left the lights on, the TV humming low, a mug beside me on the nightstand. I told myself I wouldn't wait for it tonight. But time is patient when it wants to haunt you. At 2:58 a.m., the TV flickered. Not on, not off, just a brief distortion, like the static between channels of two worlds. And then it came. Knock. Soft. Once. This time I didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at the door and whispered her name before I could stop myself. The air seemed to listen, and in that silence, the scent of jasmine returned, stronger than before, wrapping around the bed like invisible arms. It pressed against my throat, familiar and foreign at once. I could almost feel her hair against my cheek, the weight beside me. I closed my eyes. "Is that you?" I asked, barely audible. Nothing answered, but the air trembled, as if holding its breath with me. I reached for my phone to check the time. The screen said 3 a.m. The moment passed. Just like that. Gone. The next morning, I searched through my unpacked boxes. My hands shook as I pulled out items from another life. Her old books, her scarf, a half-empty perfume bottle. When I opened it, the scent was stale, lifeless, not the same. So where had the scent come from last night? I didn't have an answer. I didn't want one. I just placed the bottle on the windowsill beside the cracked pane where the wind could find it. If she wanted to come through again, I wouldn't stop her. That evening I walked home slower than usual, letting the city swallow me. Every neon light looked tired. Every street vendor, every passerby, they all seemed to exist in another world, a world where people still reached for one another. I had left that world a long time ago. When I stepped into my apartment, I noticed the faint glow of the hallway bulb outside flickering again, like it did the first night. The air was cool and quiet. Inside, something had changed. The blanket on the bed, her blanket, was folded, not neatly, not like I'd ever do it, but the way she used to, uneven, with one corner tucked under. And there it was again, the jasmine scent drifting softly from nowhere and everywhere at once. My throat closed, my hands trembled. I wanted to believe it was her, but belief is a dangerous thing when you live alone. I sat down at the edge of the bed and whispered into the dark, "If you're here, you can stay." The silence pressed back like a heartbeat. Then, for the briefest second, the curtain by the window moved, though there was no wind. And from somewhere far within the walls, I heard it again. That sound, that single, patient knock, so soft it could have been a memory, so real it made me cry. I didn't tell anyone about the knocks, not that I could. Grief has a way of isolating you long before you realize how far you've drifted. And now it was beginning to feel like company. Unseen, unwelcome, uninvited, but not unknown. On the third night, I decided to test it. I stayed up, lights off, sitting by the door like a man waiting for a ghost to come home. My phone sat face down on the floor beside me, screen dim, timer ticking in my mind instead. The apartment felt still, too still, like the walls were listening. I thought I heard her before she even knocked, the soft shuffle of footsteps just beyond the hallway wall, that gentle pause, the breath between presence and absence. Then, at exactly 2:59 a.m., it came. Knock. Not loud, not frantic, just familiar. The kind of knock a person makes when they know they're already welcome inside. I didn't open the door. Instead, I slid my eye to the peephole and froze. There was someone standing there. A shape, a silhouette, just out of view, to the side of the door, still, waiting. I held my breath and leaned closer, trying not to make a sound. Then, very slowly, the figure leaned forward, just enough for me to see the corner of a white dress sleeve, just enough for my throat to tighten and my chest to ache with recognition. She used to wear white when she couldn't sleep, long cotton sleeves, her arms always cold. She'd shuffle to the kitchen to make tea, standing exactly where that shape now stood. I pulled back from the door, and for the first time, I didn't feel alone, but I didn't feel safe either. The next morning, the hallway was empty. I checked the security camera above the elevator, though I knew it would show nothing. Ghosts don't trip motion sensors. Grief doesn't leave footprints. But memory does, and it had settled in here like dust. I began keeping a journal, not to make sense of it, just to remember. Night 3. She knocked. She stood there. I saw her sleeve. I didn't open. I think I'm scared of what might happen if I do. On the 4th night, the knock came again. Same time, same sound. But this time, the door handle moved. Just slightly. Just enough to rattle, like someone testing it, gently, patiently. I whispered, "Stop." And it did. No more movement, no more sound. But the scent came again. Jasmine, soft and almost wet, like it had rained inside. I pressed my forehead to the door. My voice shook. "What do you want?" No answer. Only the light in the hallway flickering once, and then steady again. I started dreaming of her. Not the way she was, warm, messy, alive, but as something just out of focus. In my dreams, she stood at the foot of the bed, head tilted, her hair falling in front of her face. I couldn't see her eyes. She never spoke. She only knocked, not on the door, but on the inside of the walls, as if trying to come back into something that had already closed itself off. I'd wake up with tears on my cheeks, but never fear, just grief, shaped like a shadow. One night, I left the door unlocked. I don't know why. Maybe I was testing her. Maybe I was testing myself. I left the latch undone, the chain off. I even pulled the door slightly ajar, just a crack, just enough for something thin and silent to slip through. Then I lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling until time crawled toward that hour again. 2:58. The air thickened. The hallway light flickered through the door frame. 2:59. I heard it. Not a knock this time. A whisper. My name. Low, soft, just once. I turned toward the door and found it fully closed, latched, chained, as if I'd never touched it. I ran to it, ripped the chain off, swung the door open. Nothing. No hallway, no flicker, no sound. Just me breathing hard. And on the floor, a single strand of hair. Long, black, curled slightly at the end. I bent down and picked it up with shaking hands. She always hated her hair falling out, kept complaining about it getting everywhere. I used to joke that I'd find her in the sink someday, just a pile of strands and perfume. I never thought I'd find her here.
I didn't sleep after that. The next morning, I searched the apartment for anything else. Signs, objects, maybe a trick I'd missed. Instead, I found something that shouldn't be possible. On the bathroom mirror, drawn in the steam from my shower, was a single word. Why? No question mark, no fingerprint smudge, just the shape of her grief. That night, I didn't wait in bed. I waited by the door, sitting, holding the strand of hair in my palm like it meant something. At 2:59, I didn't hear a knock. I didn't see a shadow. But the air changed. And in the silence, I understood something I hadn't before. She wasn't trying to scare me. She was waiting for me to answer. Not the door. The question.
The nights had started blending together. It was getting harder to tell which moments were real and which were memory replaying itself like a broken record. Sleep came in fragments, thin, nervous pieces of rest, broken by faint sounds. The hum of the refrigerator, the dripping of the bathroom tap, the dull moan of old pipes behind the wall. It was the sound of an old building breathing. At least, that's what I told myself. But lately, I had begun to hear something new in that breath. A rhythm, a pattern, like a voice trying to form itself out of water and metal. The first time it happened, I was brushing my teeth. Foam filled my mouth when the pipe beneath the sink began to gurgle, slow at first, then rapid, like someone whispering through a wet throat. I froze. The sound came again, a low vibration, shaping itself into syllables I almost recognized. I spat, wiped my mouth, and leaned closer. The voice seemed to pulse through the metal, distant but deliberate, a tremor beneath my fingertips. Home. The word came like air being squeezed from a dying lung. Then silence. I stared at the sink for a long time. The drain glistened. The tap dripped. Everything looked perfectly ordinary, but the room itself felt wrong, tilted, listening. When I finally turned the faucet, the water gushed out colder than ice. And beneath that rush, I swore I heard her, laughing softly, the way she used to when she wanted to hide sadness. By evening, I had convinced myself it was stress, hallucination maybe. Grief has a way of warping sound, turning emptiness into echoes of what you miss most. But the next night proved it wasn't just sound. At 2:59 a.m., the knock came, soft, single, expected. But afterward, as the silence returned, I heard the pipes again. Only this time, it wasn't random. 3 short bursts, a pause, then 2 long groans of air through metal. Knock, 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 pause, knock, knock. Like someone answering, like she was speaking back through the walls. The following morning, I sat at my table with a cup of untouched coffee, staring at the plumbing map I had sketched on a napkin. Every pipe in the apartment seemed to lead to one central line, right behind the bedroom wall, just above the bed. Her side of the bed. That evening, I moved the bed away from the wall and pressed my ear against the plaster. The surface was cold, vibrating faintly, alive. I stayed there for almost an hour, waiting, breathing in sync with the quiet. And then, faintly, through the dull heartbeat of the building, came a sound I can never forget. A woman's sigh, soft, trembling. It wasn't a moan of pain or fear. It was a sigh of longing, like someone remembering how to exist.
I whispered her name. The wall pulsed once beneath my hand, a small, cold tremor that rippled through the plaster like a response. I stumbled back, terrified of what I'd felt, but unable to stop myself from whispering again. "Are you here?" Nothing. Then, from the pipes above, came a faint rattling, like laughter, metallic, hollow, familiar. That night, I tried recording it. I placed my phone on the counter near the sink, microphone pointed toward the wall, and hit record before going to bed. The next morning, I played it back. At first, there was nothing but static, the gentle hum of the refrigerator, the faint click of the clock. Then, 31 minutes in, a sound, a long exhale through water, and under it, a voice, barely audible but clear. "Let me in." I stopped the playback immediately. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. The air in the room felt heavier, thicker, as if the words had seeped out of the recording and back into the walls. I deleted the file, but when I opened my photo gallery by accident, I noticed something strange. The voice memo had reappeared, automatically backed up to the cloud. No title, no timestamp, just the name, 259.am.wave. I hadn't named it that. For the next few days, I couldn't bring myself to use the bathroom sink. I washed dishes in a bucket, showered at the gym. But avoidance never works. Grief follows you. And one night, as I lay half asleep, the sound came again, not from the pipes this time, but from the ceiling vent above my bed. A whisper, close, personal. "You left the door closed." My body locked. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The whisper came again, softer now, almost affectionate. "Don't you want to see me?" The air felt alive. The jasmine scent flooded the room until it burned in my lungs. I turned toward the vent, eyes wide, and through the dark, a single drop of water fell from it. It hit my cheek, cold, salty, like a tear. When morning came, everything was normal again. The vent was dry, the pipes were quiet, but I knew better. She wasn't haunting this apartment. She was inside it, flowing through it like water through veins, using its lungs, its breath, its walls to reach me. And she wasn't asking anymore. She was waiting.
The apartment complex wasn't old, not ancient, not historical, not the kind of place people whispered about in forums or superstitious tea shops. Just average. 11 floors, flickering hallway lights, too many people pretending they weren't alone. And yet, none of the other doors ever seems to open. No footsteps overhead, no music, no muffled fights, no coughing behind walls, just silence and the knock at 2:59. That morning, I stood outside my own unit longer than usual, key in hand, eyes scanning the hallway. Room 1103, that was mine. But my gaze kept drifting a few doors down to 1107. Something about it felt off. The door didn't match the others, not in shape, but in feeling. The peephole was darker, the handle slightly rusted, as if it had been untouched for years, even though the building was barely 6 years old. I walked over, listened. Nothing. But when I leaned closer, I thought I heard breathing. Not mechanical, not from vent. Something
slow, tired, human. Then I saw it. A piece of white thread caught in the frame of the door, thin, delicate, like the hem of a sleeve had snagged it. I went downstairs and found the building manager, a small man with a clipboard and a voice that was too cheerful, too forced. "I live in 1103, I said. He nodded. "Good unit. High ceiling, nice view of the electrical box." I ignored the joke. "Can I ask about 1107? His smile didn't falter, but it froze, like a screen buffering. "No one's lived there for a while," he said. "How long?" He scratched behind his ear. "About a year now, maybe more." "What happened to the last tenant?" The man hesitated, just for a second, but enough. "She was sensitive," he said finally. "Didn't adjust well. Alone, you know? This city's a lot for some people." My heart thudded. "Did she die?" He blinked. No, nothing like that." But he didn't sound sure. She left." "And no one's moved in since?" He shook his head too quickly. "We don't show that unit anymore." "Why?" He paused, looked around as if the walls were listening, then lowered his voice. "Some tenants say weird things happen up there. Knocking, smells, dreams, silly things." "What kind of dreams?" He smiled, tight-lipped. "The kind that make you want to break your lease." I walked away before I could ask more, but my mind was already spinning. 1 year ago. That's when I lost her. That's when the dreams started. That's when the knocking began. What if she had lived in 1107? That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, staring at the wall I now knew was shared with 1107. My apartment and hers, if it had been hers, only separated by a thin slab of plaster and secrets. I reached out, placed my palm flat against it. The wall was cold, vibrating. And then it knocked. But not at the door. From the wall. 3 slow taps. A pause. Then 1 soft tap. A rhythm, not random. A pattern I recognized but couldn't place. I whispered her name. The wall pulsed, and the jasmine smell returned, but this time sour, spoiled, like perfume left in heat too long. I couldn't take it anymore. At 3:10 a.m., I stepped into the hallway and walked barefoot to 1107. I placed my hand on the door. It was warm. I knocked. Once. And to my surprise, it knocked back. Instantly. Once. I stepped back, heart racing. No light came from under the door. No sound of movement. Just the knock as if the apartment itself had been waiting for someone to remember. The next day, I returned to the manager. "Do you have keys to 1107? He frowned. "Why?" "I think someone might be in there." "No one's in there." "I heard..." He cut me off. "We don't go in that unit anymore." "What do you mean?" His eyes dropped to his clipboard. "The last time we opened it, it was wrong." "Wrong how?" He hesitated again. "The inside was clean, too clean, like a showroom, except the furniture was exactly like yours. Exactly." My skin went cold. "I never told anyone what I brought in." He nodded slowly. "That's why we don't open it anymore." I returned home in silence, closed the blinds, turned off the lights, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't in my own apartment anymore, like I was living in hers, like the layout had rearranged itself while I wasn't looking. I checked the mirror. The reflection felt off, slightly delayed, slightly darker. And on the glass, written in fog I hadn't seen form, was, "Which side are you on?"
I stopped checking the time. There was no point anymore. The hours moved around me like slow tides, but the current always brought me back to the same minute, 2:59 a.m., and she always came with it. The knock had become less of an intrusion and more of a ritual. It didn't surprise me anymore. It announced itself with silence before it came, a hush in the apartment, a shift in the air, the kind of pause a body takes before weeping. I started calling it her hour, because by now I'd accepted it wasn't just the apartment that remembered her. I did too. More than I meant to. More than I allowed myself to admit. The more I tried to ignore it, the stronger the memories became. They clawed their way back, not like gentle nostalgia, but like unfinished sentences desperate to be spoken. Her laugh in the kitchen, her toothbrush next to mine, the way she'd sleep with one foot outside the blanket. I saw her in flashes, not her ghost, but her habits. Her side of the bed had become uneven, the sheets wrinkled in a shape that matched the curve of her spine. Her mug, the one I never unpacked, was now sitting in the sink. I hadn't touched it, but there it was, damp, used. I ran my fingers along the rim, still warm. One afternoon, a coworker stopped by. I hadn't invited him, but he insisted. Said I sounded strange on the phone, said he was worried. He stepped in, looked around. "It's, quiet," he said. I nodded. "Smells like perfume," he added, sniffing. "Someone over?" "No," I said too quickly. He raised an eyebrow. "Really? I saw a second toothbrush in the bathroom." I stared at him. "What?" He shrugged. "Yeah, pink one. Look new." But I only had one toothbrush. Always had. Blue, worn. Mine. When he left, I rushed to the bathroom. There it was. A pink toothbrush. Soft bristles, slightly damp, exactly like hers. I backed out slowly. The mirror was fogged, though I hadn't showered. And in the fog, 3 words formed slowly. "I remember you." That night, I didn't try to sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, all the lights off, candle burning low, and I spoke to her. Not like a seance, not like a prayer, just like I used to when we were both still real. "I don't know what you want, but I know I never let you leave." The air didn't shift, no knocks, no flickers. Only the faintest sound from under the floor, like someone breathing through tears. I started having visions. Not dreams. Visions. Sharp, sudden, invasive. They would hit me in the middle of brushing my teeth, or staring out the window, or trying my shoes. I'd blink, and suddenly I'd be back there, in the old apartment, the one before this. I'd see her standing at the sink, hands covered in soap, laughing about something I never remembered. I'd hear the kettle whistle, but it wouldn't stop. It would rise into a scream. And when I turned, she was gone, replaced by an empty dress. Then I'd blink again and be back in this apartment, alone, always alone.
I checked the closet one night. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. And there it was. Her sweater. Folded, pressed to my chest like it hadn't moved in months. I picked it up. Still smelled like her. Still soft in the way memory makes things softer than they were. I held it, sat down, rocked like a child, and I whispered again, "I'm sorry." This time, the pipes didn't respond, but I didn't need them to, because the sweater in my arms exhaled, a soft, trembling breath, like someone who had been waiting to be held again. The next morning, I found my phone open to the gallery app, a photo I didn't take. It was the hallway, dimly lit, blurry, and in the corner, just beside my door, a white sleeve, partially turned as if walking away. No face, just fabric and sorrow. The timestamp read 2:59 a.m., but the phone had been in my drawer all night. Hadn't it? That day, I understood something important. She wasn't haunting me. I was feeding her. Every memory, every guilt, every refusal to let go, it kept her shape alive. Grief isn't passive. It builds, it clings, it breathes. And in my case, it knocked. Always at the same time. Because that's what love does when it's refused the dignity of goodbye. It waits. It scratches. It whispers through walls. It takes the form of familiar footsteps. And it feeds on what we don't say out loud. She was growing stronger. Not because she was angry, but because I wouldn't let the dark go quiet. And I was beginning to wonder, if I didn't open the door soon, would she come in anyway?
It always came at 2:59 a.m. Not before, not after. I started to realize that minute wasn't a minute. It was a space, a crack between 2 days, a breath between sleep and waking, a silence that held its own gravity. And once it began, time felt different, heavier, slower, like something was waiting inside it. I tried to time it, to count exactly how long that minute lasted. I used a stopwatch on my phone. When the knock came, I tapped start, waited, breathed. But nothing changed. The timer kept ticking. 60 seconds, 61, 65. I frowned, glanced at the wall clock. It still read 2:59, even as my phone passed 100 seconds. The digital clock on the stove, also 2:59. The old watch in the drawer, 2:59. I blinked. My heart slowed. I was stuck. Inside the minute. The apartment shifted. It was subtle at first. The shadows stretched longer. The air grew dense, like it hadn't been stirred in years. And then I heard it. Not the knock, not her. Something else. Breathing. But not mine. Not human. It came from every direction at once, through the vents, the walls, the floorboards. It vibrated like a low hum, almost a chant, like the sound of someone waiting to be noticed. I stood slowly. My body felt heavy, like it was moving underwater. Even my footsteps sounded distant, muted. I walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside. The city was still.
No cars, no lights. The buildings across the street were frozen. A bird mid-flap, a man mid-stride, as if the world had paused, as if I had slipped somewhere I didn't belong. Behind me, the knock came again. Soft, single, 2:59 a.m. I turned slowly, but the door was already open, just a crack. The hallway was darker than usual, not black, but grayed out like an old photo left in the rain. And there she was, standing just outside the frame. Not in full view, just a sliver of her, the edge of her white dress, a hand, pale, unmoving. Her nails were clean. She always kept them short. That's how I knew it was her. But her hand didn't reach out. It just waited. And time didn't move. I whispered, "What do you want?" And the voice, not spoken, but felt, pressed softly into the silence. To be remembered right. The door swung wider. The hallway flickered like a candle guttering in the wind. And then I saw it. Photos, Polaroids scattered across the walls outside. Hundreds of them. All of me. Different days, different clothes, brushing my teeth, asleep on the couch, staring at my phone. But always alone. And in every photo, just behind me, she stood. Out of focus, almost smiling, like a shadow that had learned how to wait. I reached for one, the photo of me eating dinner from 2 nights ago. And in the picture, I was looking straight at her. Suddenly, all the clocks jumped to 3 a.m., and everything snapped back. The hallway emptied, the photos gone. My phone buzzed once, then went silent. The minute was over, and I was sweating through my shirt. That morning, I wrote in my journal, "She's not trying to come in. She's trying to pull me through." I stopped going to work, stopped taking calls, stopped pretending this was temporary. 2:59 wasn't a time anymore. It was a place, and she had been building it around me, minute by minute, night after night. Soon, I knew it wouldn't just be 1 minute. Soon, I might not come back. One night, I left every clock unplugged, every device powered off. I thought maybe without a reminder, the moment would pass. But when I closed my eyes, even in the dark, I knew when it was 2:59 a.m. because everything in the room stopped breathing. Even me. She knocked. Once. Not at the door. Not at the wall. This time, from under the bed. Her side was always the left, closer to the window. She said she liked the breeze, the feel of the night air pressing through the cracked pane. Even in winter, she'd sleep with one arm uncovered, curled toward the wall. I used to joke she was part ghost already. I never slept on that side, even after she was gone, even when I was the only one left in the bed. It stayed untouched, a preservation, a denial, an ache shaped like a habit. But now, it was warm. I noticed it one morning. I rolled over, still tangled in half sleep, and my hand brushed against her pillow. It was warm. Not faintly, not the leftover heat of the sun through the blinds, but deeply warm, alive, as if someone had just been lying there, just gotten up, just left the sheets. I sat up slowly. The pillow bore the faintest indent, too deep to be chance, too fresh to ignore. And the jasmine scent was strongest there, so strong it made my throat tighten. I said nothing that day, not even in my journal. I couldn't bring myself to write it down, because writing it meant accepting it happened. And if I accepted it, what else might I accept? The next night, I slept on the floor, not out of fear, out of respect. It felt like trespassing now. Her side was no longer empty, and I wasn't sure if it ever truly had been. Around midnight, I woke to a soft creaking sound, not from the walls, not from the pipes, from the bed. The mattress shifted, very gently, the sound of someone rolling over in sleep. I didn't open my eyes, didn't move, just lay on the floor still, heart heavy. The jasmine scent drifted down like a hush, and a moment later, I heard breathing, right above me, measured, calm, like someone dreaming. At 2:59 a.m., the knock came, but not from the door, not even from under the bed this time, from the pillow. A soft tap, right where her head would have been, as if she was knocking on memory itself. My eyes filled with tears before I even realized it, not from terror, but from recognition. She was still here, not trapped, not angry, just waiting. That morning I sat on the edge of the bed, knees shaking, and whispered, "I remember now." The words came from someplace deeper than language. The truth was, I'd forgotten the day she died. Not the facts, not the date, the moment, the specific aching moment. It was her birthday. She'd asked me not to forget. And I hadn't exactly. I'd just been late. I'd gone out to buy her a cake, a surprise. She'd stayed home, tired, wrapped in her blanket. And while I stood in line at a bakery, irritated by how long it was taking, she died. A brain aneurysm, sudden, silent. She was gone before I paid. I came home to find her still curled up, face peaceful, as if she'd just fallen asleep. Her side of the bed untouched, but this time permanently. And I never forgave myself. Not for the delay, not for leaving, but for not being there when she left. So I left the bed untouched. I moved to another apartment, another city, another life. But memory doesn't live in furniture. It lives in the minute you avoid, in the side of the bed you pretend isn't whispering. It waits until grief ripens into haunting. I reached for the pillow and whispered again, "I'm sorry I wasn't there." The room exhaled. The curtain shifted, and the pillow beneath my hand grew cold. Not harsh, not angry, just empty. That night at 2:59 a.m., there was no knock. There was no scent, no warmth, No flickering lights. Only silence. Still and absolute. As if she'd finally heard me. As if she'd finally slept.
For the first time in weeks, the night passed without a knock. No scent, no creak of mattress, no shift in the shadows. I should have felt relief. I should have called it closure, but I didn't. I felt emptier than before, like the silence had teeth now, like something had left, but something else had stayed behind. The apartment felt different, not haunted, but hollow. Like a stage after the actor has walked off, but the lights haven't gone out. Everything was still in place. Her sweater, the pink toothbrush, the mug in the sink. But they no longer pulsed with presence. They were just things again. Dead things. And maybe that was worse. So I did what people do when they're desperate. I looked online. Late into the night, I scrolled through forums and threads. Not the ones you find easily, the buried ones. The ones where people speak in fragments. About her hour. About doors that knock from the inside. About ghosts that don't appear until they're remembered the wrong way. I found a post. Just 2 lines. If she doesn't knock, it means she's waiting for you to knock first. The door isn't hers anymore. It's yours. Beneath that, a ritual. The mirror ritual. Steps whispered like myth. Light a single candle. Face a mirror. Speak her name. Leave the door slightly open, but only a crack. Knock 3 times, softly. Wait until 2:59 a.m. Don't look away. If she answers, listen. If she doesn't, close the door, never the mirror. I didn't believe it, but I did it anyway. Because sometimes belief isn't required, only longing. That night, I lit a candle, placed it on the bathroom sink. The flame flickered too hard for a room with no draft. I stood in front of the mirror. My reflection looked pale, tired, not haunted, just emptied. I whispered her name, once, twice, 3 times. The mirror didn't fog, didn't ripple, didn't bleed. I stepped out into the hallway, cracked the door open, then came back, knelt, faced the mirror. I knocked, once, twice, 3 times. Then I waited. The candle danced. The shadows behind me deepened, and the silence pressed in. At 2:59 a.m., everything stopped. The flame went still. My breath froze, and in the mirror, my reflection blinked, but I didn't. I leaned in, heart hammering. My reflection was looking past me now, over my shoulder, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. But I hadn't moved. I hadn't turned. A cold breath touched the back of my neck. The scent of jasmine filled the room, and in the mirror, behind my reflected shoulder, she stood. Just a shape, just a face, just eyes that weren't angry, only sad, like someone who had waited too long in the rain. She raised her hand in the mirror, touched my shoulder.
I felt nothing, but the weight of it was undeniable. Then she whispered, "I knocked every night." I whispered back, "I know." The mirror pulsed, not visually, emotionally. It felt like memory stretched tight enough to snap. And then she asked, "Can I come in?" I didn't answer. I reached for the door, not to open it further, to close it, gently, respectfully. And in the mirror, she smiled. Not out of joy, not out of forgiveness, but recognition. Like she finally knew I saw her clearly. At 3 a.m., the candle flickered once and went out. And when I turned to look behind me, the room was empty. The mirror reflected only me. The next morning, I found the door fully closed, locked, sealed, but the mirror still held something. Just beneath the fog that formed from my breath, a message. You listened.
It took me weeks to realize what the time meant. At first, it was just a number that haunted me. 2:59 a.m., a minute branded into the dark like a curse. But it wasn't random. It never was. She was never random. That minute had belonged to us once, before the silence, before the loss. Every night when she worked the late shift, she'd come home right before 3, always tired, always gentle. I'd wait up, pretending to sleep, pretending not to need her return to feel safe. The moment I heard her soft knock, one, single, I'd get up, open the door, and smile. It was our ritual. She'd whisper, "You waited again," and I'd whisper back, "Always." That's what 2:59 was, the time love came home. And the night it didn't, she never did. I don't know why I forgot that until now. Maybe the mind hides the tenderest things so grief can't devour them too soon. Maybe remembering too early would have killed me. But the ghost wasn't punishing me. She was reminding me. She wasn't haunting the apartment. She was haunting the hour. Once I understood, everything began to make sense. The knocks weren't warnings. They were arrivals. The scent wasn't decay. It was welcome. The warmth on her side of the bed, not intrusion, but invitation. She wasn't trying to pull me into death. She was trying to bring me back to the last time I was alive with her. That minute before the world forgot how to breathe. But understanding something doesn't mean you know what to do with it. Every night I sat waiting for her, unsure whether to open the door or finally let it stay closed. The knocks came softer now, like a question she was too polite to ask again. And sometimes I could almost hear her humming through the walls, a tune half remembered, something she used to sing while washing dishes. A song without words, a melody that never ended. One night I spoke back. "I remember you," I whispered. The air shifted, the walls sighed, and then for the first time I heard her voice. Faint, distant, but undeniably hers. "Then remember all of it." Her tone cracked like an old recording. Her tone wasn't angry, it was pleading. So I did. I remembered everything. The morning coffee she never finished, the fight we never resolved, the gift I never gave her, the way she smiled when she thought no one was watching, the way her hands always trembled when she was tired. Memory flooded back in waves until I was drowning in her. And yet, somewhere inside the grief, I felt warmth again.
The kind you can only feel from something still real. Because maybe in some way, she still was. That night at 2:59, I didn't sit in fear. I stood by the door, waiting. When the knock came, it was soft, reverent, almost shy. I didn't rush to open it. I just placed my hand against the wood and whispered. I waited again. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then from the other side, her whisper, clearer than it had ever been. Always. And with that, everything in the room fell still. The air settled. The light steadied. The scent of jasmine faded gently, not vanished, just receded, like someone walking farther down a familiar hallway. When the clock turned 3 a.m., I knew the ritual had ended. Not because I closed it, because she had. I still wake at that time sometimes, out of habit, out of love. I don't hear her knock anymore. But the silence doesn't hurt now. It feels like memory holding its breath. And sometimes, I swear I can still feel her warmth on the other side of the door. Not trapped, not lost, just waiting for me, wherever time bends softly enough for love to knock again.
I used to think the apartment was what held her. The walls, the bed, the floor beneath my feet. But lately, I've begun to suspect it's more than that. It's the building itself. It listens, and it remembers. After the last knock faded, and the air settled into a kind of soft finality, I noticed something strange. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt aware, like someone was still watching. Not her. Something older, something deeper than just grief. The building creaked differently now, not like wood expanding, more like breath. I began to hear faint noises I hadn't noticed before. Shifting in the walls, voices behind vents, footsteps in the hallway where no doors ever opened. And late one night, I heard a child crying from somewhere above me. There was no 12th floor. I confronted the building manager again, cornered him outside the elevator as he was fixing the panel with trembling hands. I asked him about the woman who lived in 1107, the one he said left. He looked at me carefully, then sighed. She didn't leave. She just faded. Faded? I asked. He nodded. She lived alone, like you. She heard knocking too, and she started talking to it, answering it. What happened to her? He glanced around. I found her one morning, he whispered, sitting at the kitchen table, smiling. Dead? No. He looked up. Gone. I didn't understand. Gone where? He leaned in, voice almost shaking. She wasn't in the apartment anymore, but her voice was. I didn't sleep that night. I walked the halls at 3 a.m., barefoot, barely breathing. There were no footsteps, no sounds, but I could feel it, the building breathing, as if every floorboard had lungs, every wall a memory, every door a veil. The next day, I met an old woman on the elevator. She wore a scarf with tiny faded flowers, held a paper bag like it was filled with glass. She looked at me and said softly, "You're in 1103, aren't you?" I nodded.
She didn't smile. She only said, "They always come back to that unit." "Who?" I asked. "Those who tried to forget someone who still knocks." That night, I began to notice something else. The wall behind the bed, the one I moved away from, had changed. The paint was peeling, but beneath it, there were words, faint, etched into the plaster. I scraped gently with my fingernail, revealing sentence after sentence, too many to count, and they were all the same. "I'm still here," over and over, layered, overwritten, different handwriting, different hands, all whispering the same truth. I took a flashlight and began exploring. Not the apartment, the building. The basement door was marked staff only. It was locked, but the key was already in it, as if it wanted me to open it. The air downstairs was thick, damp, full of old breath. Water stains stretched across the ceiling like veins. Faint whispers echoed down the pipes, not sounds, but feelings. And there, in the corner, I found them. Boxes, hundreds of them, stacked like offerings, each labeled with a unit number. Mine. I opened it. Inside, photographs of me, sleeping, standing by the door, sitting at the table. And in each photo, scrawled across the back in fading ink, "He still listens." There were other boxes too, and inside them, records, written accounts, pages torn from journals, all from tenants who had lived in the building before, all saying the same things I had felt: the knocking, the voice, the scent, the grief that grew teeth. And one line, written by someone whose name had been scratched out: "The building doesn't trap ghosts, it listens to them. And if you're not careful, it listens to you too." I closed the box, walked back up the stairs, left the key in the lock, and when I stepped into my apartment, the walls felt warmer, more alert, more aware. That night, no knock came, but when I passed by the mirror, my reflection wasn't alone. Not her. Me. Another version of me, sitting at the table, smiling gently, like someone who had accepted something I hadn't yet. I turned away, and from behind the wall, just once, the soft sound of breath. Not hers, mine.
I used to believe doors only opened in one direction, in or out, here or there, alive or gone. But I've lived inside this silence long enough to know now. Some doors open sideways, some open inward, and some open without ever moving at all. That night, I sat by the door. I didn't prepare anything. No candles, no mirror, No questions. Just me, the quiet, and the memory of her knock. I didn't expect it. I didn't wait for it. But at 2:59 a.m., it came. Only this time, the sound didn't come from the wood. It came from behind me, from inside. A knock within the room, within the air. And when I turned, the door was open, just slightly. But I hadn't moved. I hadn't touched it. And I always locked it. Always. I stood up slowly. The hallway beyond looked the same. Flickering light, silent wallpaper, muted green carpet. But something was different. It was her silence now. Heavy, mournful, familiar. I stepped forward. One foot crossed the threshold, then the other. And I realized something impossible. It wasn't the hallway I was walking into. It was her memory. The walls around me pulsed. Faint outlines of our old apartment emerged. Her coat hanging on the back of a chair. The plant she kept killing and replacing. The couch where we once said too much and not enough. It was like someone had reassembled our past from grief and air. I heard a kettle whistle, the same kettle I haven't unpacked in over a year. The sound looped softly, rising and falling like breath. And then she appeared. Not a ghost, not a phantom. Just her, wearing the soft cotton dress she used to sleep in, hair pulled up carelessly, a smudge of tea on her sleeve. She didn't glow, she didn't float, she didn't scare me. She hurt me, the kind of hurt that comes from love still echoing where it has nowhere to land. She looked at me. And for a moment, I forgot how to move. We stood across a space made of sorrow. Then, without a word, she raised her hand, reached toward mine. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just stepped forward, and our fingertips almost touched. Almost. But before we could close the distance, a wind passed between us, soft, gentle, final, like the world exhaling, and the memory began to collapse. The apartment around us faded, walls dissolving into shadow, light peeling into ash. I reached for her again, desperate now. But she shook her head, not in rejection, in peace. And then she whispered, almost inaudibly, "You don't have to follow. You just have to let go." The hallway returned, plain, dim, still. I stood in the open doorway, shaking. The scent of jasmine slowly evaporated, like morning mist burning off the skin of the world. And the door quietly closed itself. I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table until sunrise, staring at the place where the two spaces had touched. And when light finally filtered in, I understood. She had never wanted to be let in. She had wanted out. And I had finally held the door open long enough for her to walk through. Not into death, but into memory that didn't hurt anymore. Now, when I wake in the middle of the night, I still check the door, still glance at the clock,
And sometimes it's 2:59, but there's no knock, no shift in air, no perfume, no reflection that doesn't belong, only quiet. And in that quiet, her absence, not hollow, not cruel, just gentle, like someone who has finally made it home.
It was a silence that follows grief, not the loud kind that cries in stairwells or stares at ceilings, but the soft kind, the kind that doesn't echo anymore. That's the silence I woke up to. For the first time in a long while, I slept past 2:59 a.m. There was no knock, no shadow, no scent, just stillness. The kind that feels like air has stopped remembering. I sat at the kitchen table as morning light crawled in, hands wrapped around a mug, no tea inside, just the weight of ritual. Her chair across from me felt different. Not haunted, not sacred, just empty, and finally allowed to be. I spent the day cleaning. Not the kind of cleaning you do when company's coming, but the kind you do when you're finally ready to say goodbye. I opened drawers I had avoided, lifted shirts I hadn't worn since she left, touched things that had grown brittle with avoidance, and one by one I packed them away. Her books, her scarf, the photo we never framed, the pink toothbrush. I didn't throw them out, I didn't burn them. I just folded them gently, placed them in a box, and whispered to each, "Thank you." Grief taught me something. You don't release a ghost by forcing it to go. You let it leave by showing it you remember without needing it to stay. That night, I lit a candle. No rituals, no mirrors, no expectations. I set it in the center of the room, turned off every light, sat down, and waited. Not for a knock, not for a voice, just for the silence that no longer hurts. At 2:59 a.m., the clock ticked softly, but there was no shift, no breath from the walls, no echo in the pipes, only warmth. A presence so soft it didn't arrive, it simply was. I closed my eyes, and in that quiet, she came to me. Not in form, not in sound, but in a feeling I had forgotten how to carry. Love. Unburdened, unanchored, released. She didn't speak, but I felt her standing behind me, hands on my shoulders, not asking to be let in, just letting me know she was ready to leave. "I'm sorry I kept you," I whispered, and in my chest I felt the reply, "You kept me because I needed to be kept, but you don't need to anymore." I opened my eyes. The candle was out. The room was dark. And the air, it was mine again. The next morning, I stood by the door, opened it wide, let the hallway breathe into the apartment. No fear, no flickering, no hesitation. I set the box of her things just inside the door, not to forget, but to offer back, to time, to memory, to her. And when I closed the door, it felt final, not in a cruel way, in a clean way, like finishing the last page
of a story written in tears. I still live here, still in 1103, still alone, but it no longer feels like I'm waiting for anything. At night, I make tea for one. I sit where she used to sit, and sometimes I laugh at nothing. The kind of laugh you only share with someone who's no longer there, but would have laughed with you anyway. Some nights I wake up at 2:59 a.m., out of habit, and I listen. Not for a knock, not for a voice, just for the silence that no longer hurts.
The apartment is still the same. Same chipped countertop, same crooked hallway light, same cracked window that lets the cold in when it rains. But something inside it has changed. Not the space, me. The haunting is over, but the memory remains, and I no longer wish it gone. I make tea every night now, always at the same time, even when I'm not thirsty. 2 cups, one for me, one for the silence. It's not a ritual, it's a conversation between what was and what still is. I don't wait for 2:59 anymore, but I notice when it comes. It passes like a breeze I once knew, cool and weightless, like someone walking through without knocking. Sometimes the shadows in the corner look a little softer. Sometimes the air smells faintly of jasmine for no reason at all. And once in a while, the pipes hum a tune I never learned, but somehow recognize. She doesn't visit now. Not in the mirrors, not through the walls, not in dreams. She's somewhere else, but part of her stayed. In the way the apartment sighs at midnight, in the way my hand always finds the left side of the bed cold and no longer minds. I thought grief was a door, a sealed one, something to be broken through or forever locked. But it isn't. It's a frame. And we spend our lives standing in it, between what we lost and what we carry forward. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room. And I've made space for her now, in the quiet, in the small routines, in the warmth that follows sorrow when it finally stops pretending to be anger. The hallway outside is brighter than it used to be. I hear neighbors now, distant footsteps, muffled laughter. Life has started again, not loudly, just enough, and I let it in. Every once in a while, someone asks why I have 2 teacups. I just smile. It's an old habit, I say, but some habits are worth keeping. And in that moment, just for a heartbeat, I feel her beside me. Not haunting, just present. The way all great love stories end. Quietly, without a door slamming, without a scream. Just a breath and a memory, still steeping.